Good. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think that probably the best piece of advice I ever received is, when I was 8 or 9 years old, I was hanging out with a bunch of my friends and we were just doing something dumb that we weren't supposed to be. And my dad caught us and he pulled me over and he said, "Hey, listen," he's like, "the things that, when you're young, you want to fit in. Um, but the things that make you special are the things that make you stick out. So
Mm.
stop going along with the crowd. And, if something's making you feel weird, then don't do it. Right." And that sort of stuck with me from that point on. You start to view your friends a little bit different, after you have an experience where you go, "I don't know, this seems kind of weird. I don't really like this." And so it was nice to just have some affirmation from your dad saying, "Hey, listen, you don't have to go along with these guys. Just do, what your conscience tells you." Yeah, yeah, and as a matter of fact, usually it gives you the worst results. I think we see that with kids all the time, right? Kids go to school and kids want to fit in. They just want to fit in. That's all they want to do. But if you're a kid that fits in, then you become an adult that just kind of coast through life. I think you gotta embrace the things that make you special and kind of follow your passions and follow your conscience and let yourself be the person that you're supposed to be rather than just going along with whatever the mold is. Yeah, I think that it varies over time and circumstance. Life is such a varied thing. We have family and friends and work and school, all these different situations and social groups that we're in. And I think that each group has people that mentor you or that help you along or that have a big influence on you. So it's a little hard to pick out just one. I think that if I had to pick just one, I'd probably go with my mom, because she's been there since the beginning. And she's had such a big impact in several different areas. I was homeschooled from like the third grade on. And, it really made a big difference in how I developed as a person. Because my mom just didn't see school as something we did during the day. We'd go through the textbooks, we'd do all the stuff, but then after that, she'd take us to a museum, right? And she'd say, "Man, look at these dinosaur bones. Isn't this so cool? Could you imagine this thing if it was alive?" And as a little kid, then all of a sudden you're running around the museum reading all the placards and really, that just instilled with me this curiosity and joy for life, where all of a sudden you realize, man, everything is interesting. Everything is
Right.
really cool. And I don't know if that's the sort of perspective I'd have without that influence.
A moment, it's
Yeah,
an opportunity for you to learn. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Where humans are learning machines. That's what we do, and it's a really bad mindset to think, well, this is something that I do between 7 and 3, between the ages of 5 and 18, because as you go throughout life, we all have stuff we have to learn every day. We have to remember when appointments are, and we have to learn new job responsibilities and learn how people in our lives work emotionally and socially, and we're always learning all the time. So it's not something you can ever stop or turn off. So you might as well embrace it and try to be the best you can at it. Okay. Yeah, it's so I like to tell people when they ask me to start from the beginning, that I failed preschool. Right. So um I was born in September, so I was a little bit young when I went, but I went, and by the end of the term there, the teacher said, "He seems to be really smart, but he didn't say a single word to anybody the whole time. So he's gonna have to do it again." Um, and a lot of people don't realize this about me because I have a podcast, but I am extremely introverted, right? I'm a quiet guy by nature, so I'm not super outgoing. So it started there, and then I was in school for a few years, and things went pretty well. But I got to third grade, and my mom said, I think that the potential's there to do some more. So she pulled me out and homeschooled me, and got me some tutors and stuff for math later on. And I went, I worked at, I went to community college, got an associate's degree, and then applied to a 4-year school and just saw the price tag and said, I can't do this, and I'm not taking out student loans, right? So I worked at McDonald's for a few years, and during that time I did a lot of um, interesting things. That's when I learned how to play 7 different instruments and built a recording studio and released some albums, and learned how to paint and do a lot of cool stuff. But after a couple of years, I said, man, going to school is what I really want to do. I love learning, right? And growing up, I'd thought about joining the army, and I go, well, those two things kind of relate, right? If I join the army, I know I can go to school. So
Right.
um, joined the reserves and went back to school and got a master's degree in education, and now I'm working on a PhD in psychology, and eventually got into manufacturing, and now I'm the production manager for a manufacturing facility that makes products for the electrical grid and safety products and things. So yeah, and just writing books and learning how to 3D print and just all kinds of stuff. But yeah, that's a real interesting question, right? Because you can think of the biggest setback as being the most catastrophic fireball in one way,
Right.
or you can kind of think of it as the thing that had the biggest impact on you, And for me, the one that had the biggest impact was, I remember being 6 years old, and my best friend was a kid that lived across the street, and he was 7. So he was a big kid that I looked up to, right? But he came over, and we were swinging on my swing set one day, and there was a little white butterfly that landed right underneath my swing, and he said, "Stop it!" And my mom, who was gardening, a few feet away, she said, "Don't do it," right? And I stomped the butterfly, and that's something that I'll never forget. I'll never forget how that felt when I stomped him, and then my mom pulled me off the swing. And she didn't yell at me or anything, but it was a similar talk that my dad would have with me a few years later about, listen, you can't just let other people dictate your behavior. You got to think about the actions you're taking. Like, here's this thing that never did anything to you, that was innocent and pure, and you stomped it into the ground. Like, you got to think about who you're surrounding yourself with, why you're making the decisions that you're making, and all that kind of things. And we're human beings, so we all make mistakes. And I wouldn't say that that's the last time I was ever influenced by an outside force that caused me to do something I didn't want to do. But collectively, you have that experience, and it's one step in the journey towards being somebody who thinks for themselves, right? And being somebody who's not influenced by some of those negative people in your life. So yeah, that's the one that sticks with me, 30 years later. Yeah, especially when it comes to life, I think that, especially where I am now, I realize that life is the most precious gift that there is. And so, some people draw a distinction between a tiny white butterfly and a human being, and some people don't. But regardless, nobody's going to deny that it's something really special and something that shouldn't be just discarded or taken from carelessly, and yeah, that's really something that I still think about. Yeah, it's mystery is what it is. And I think that it's something that I've noticed really separates philosophers from non-philosophers, or people who do have an appreciation for learning and curiosity, right? Because I think there's a lot of people who, when they're confronted with mystery, right, whether it's what happens after you die, or where the universe came from, or what makes up an atom, or whatever the case may be, right? Some people think about those things, and then it scares them, and they go, I'm just going to choose not to think about this, right? And that's not a great strategy, right? Because someday you're going to have to think about it. Someday you will die, right? Someday you'll have to look at these things. But to me, the mystery is the invigorating part, right? I like not knowing, but I like trying to find out, right? So it's that exercise, it's the journey, it's the process of it. And and really, the one thing that studying philosophy has taught me is that no matter how much you know about something, you'll never know it all. There's always going to be more to learn about anything, right? And so you have to embrace that mystery. You have to embrace the uncertainty and the being unable to know, in order to enjoy it. And yeah, that's my why, is those unanswered questions, and sort of the beauty of the human experience, right? That stuff is so weird that we couldn't even write a piece of fiction that came anywhere near being as strange as reality is. That's the cool part. Ooh, man, that's that's a difficult one. Man, there is just a lot of them. I think that my inclination is to go as far back in history as I can, because the farther back you go, the more sort of shrouded in uncertainty things become. Um, yeah, I think Socrates might be a cool one, right? Because everything that we know about Socrates was a, basically what Plato wrote about him. And so there's a lot of things where you go, well, did he actually say this, or did he actually do this, or was it just something Plato was reporting? And it would just be really cool to actually meet the guy, because then you'd be able to sort of figure out, how much of it is myth and how much of it is man, and what sort of things really happened and transpired. I think that would he'd probably be the one. That's another difficult question, right? Because I don't want to pick a band that's too good, because I'm not good enough to play in that band. Um, oh man, it would be cool to be the rhythm guitarist for Jimi Hendrix. That's
Too
what
cool.
I think that'd be an ultimate goal, right? Because I don't think it'd be too hard. You could play some power chords and maybe some major sevenths and things here, and let him solo over the top. Um, but he'd be there to carry it, and then there's just such a lasting legacy there from both a creative and a musical production standpoint that just revolutionized the history of music. I think that would probably be the cool one. Um, yeah, that would be my pick. I wouldn't want to be the co-star. I wouldn't want to be anything else. But if I could be the rhythm guitarist or even the bass player, that would be the dream job, I think. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think he'd probably be pretty easy to play with too. So the reggae thing. Once you can get the rhythm pattern down, it's not too hard to stay with. So probably be a pretty good gig too. Yeah, this is part of the reason I started the show, right? Is because I didn't know what philosophy really was until community college, right? I was like, okay, well, it's something to do with old guys with big beards and that are mad at the world and a bunch of dusty books, and it's really not any of that, right? What I tell people now is that philosophy is everyone's favorite topic. They just don't know it yet, right? Because what it is it's the logic behind your beliefs. So it's the reason we believe and act the way we do. And so you've already asked a few interesting questions that give you some insight into why that might be interesting to me, right? You have some experiences in your life where you go, why the heck did I just do that? Or what was I thinking at that time? And then that sort of causes this self reflection or metacognition, to say, well, what are my core beliefs? What's guiding me here? And that's what philosophy. That's what it is, right? So everybody has one. Now you may not have thought much about it, but everybody has one, right? Some people will say, well, oh, this is what I believe. Well, why is that? Well, I'm not sure. Or they'll start stumbling around. Well, that's a good sign that maybe you should become more interested in philosophy, right? If your reason is, well, because I read it on Facebook, or because, this is just what my family has always said or something, that's not a good reason, right? You want to dig a little bit deeper. And when you do, you come across all kinds of interesting topics. Like I was saying, you can never know everything about anything. And so that's what my show's about. Usually we take one word every week and we spend a whole hour talking about it, looking at the historical thought on it, then discussing what the meaning of it is, what the concept actually is, and then asking speculative questions about what it means to humanity and where it could go in the future. And we do this about all kinds of things. We've done it about God and time, as well as things like Disney princesses, right? Or entertainment franchise reboots, right? You can ask these questions about anything. So that's why it's everybody's favorite topic. No matter what you like, you can dig into it at a deeper level and really get excited about what you can know and what you can never know, really. Yeah, I think it's kind of what I was just alluding to there. And I think we're seeing it on an epidemic level, with the advances in technology and social media, right, is that a lot of people are um, taking what they know and believe for granted. You surround yourself in a social media echo chamber, right, where you choose friends who believe what the same things you believe, and then the algorithms in the technology pick up on what you like and reinforce those. And before you know it, you're never exposed to any beliefs that are different from yours. You're never exposed to any people that are different from you. And very quickly, you can find yourself sort of engrossed and entrenched in a very polarized viewpoint where you you're adamantly and violently sure of what you believe, but you have no reason for believing it other than um, these things were suggested to you by other people, right? And so that's the importance of philosophy is logic, syllogisms, right? The ability to say, I believe this because this, um, and to be able to sort of establish a causal chain for why you believe what you believe, and not to just have to sort of gaslight people or get angry or stumble around and not know the answers to those questions. So that's why it's important. And yeah, I think that a course like logic really should be taught in school. It's kind of like, it's sort of like a math equation but without any math, right? You just have
Right.
to say, well, if A and B equals C, well then, how did all the things fit together? But now you see, and here's the important part about philosophy, and you've probably picked up on it already in the interview, right? Is that things are always much more complicated and nuanced than they seem. So lots of times you're asking me questions, and people, they a lot of people hate this about me, but I rarely give a straight answer, right? Success, as a term, we can sort of define the term generally, but I think it depends very much on what the situation is, right? Um, what my metric for success in school is versus music versus this conversation versus anything else is very different. Um, so would you ask me what my definition of success is for my life or for humanity, or I'd need a more specific question, I guess. Okay. Yeah. I think that it builds off of the experiences that I've talked about so far, right? I think it's becoming the person that you are meant to be, that you want to be, to the best of your ability, right? And we're all a work in progress that is never finished, right? It's never complete. Um, and again, that's something that scares some people, right? You go, okay, well, even if someday I turn out to be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or somebody, right? You're still going to die, and the companies that you built are still going to collapse or be split up or bought out by somebody else. And 300 years from now, people may not know who you are besides in a textbook or something, right? um, and that would scare people. Um, but then the flip side of that is, right, it doesn't matter if you're 70 or 80 or 90 years old. You can always change, right? And you can always learn, and you can always adapt who that vision of who you are, what it is, where it goes, right? So I get that asked that question a lot because um, people who know me, their general reactions to me are, um, well, hey, why do you work that job? And I go, I've had offers to get paid $40,000 a year other places, but I choose the job that I choose because I like the people that are there, and the work that I do is fulfilling, and the hours that I work allow me to pursue my hobbies and other things, right? So money is a very, very small part of the equation there. Same thing with music. People go, hey, you do really good music. You should tour and try to promote it and get it out there and all this sorts of stuff. And I go, I've been in live bands. I don't like it. I'm an introvert, right? I've had I had a guy get a hold of me and go, I've got 3 guys that want to play your songs live. They want to go tour. Do you want to do it? And I said, no. I don't like playing live music. I like recording stuff in my studio and putting it out there. And my nightmare is being famous, right? I don't want to be recognized everywhere I go. Like I just want to do my thing and I do, you want to get to the point. I think success, right, is you want to get to the point where whatever you're doing in the present moment is something that you find fulfilling and is something that you want to do, right? And so that's the way I've structured my life, right? I've tried to choose a job and hobbies and a wife and friends that I love and enjoy being around, you know. And again, it's always a work in progress. There's things that are changing, and life throws curveballs at you, and you adapt to it, and everybody's going to have bad times, but that's always the goal. That's the definition of success, right? It's getting to the point where you're enjoying life, right? Yeah.
Because
Yeah, and I think it goes along with sort of the gamification of life, right? Like people want to keep up with the Joneses, and they act like there's some sort of goal, but the difference between life and a game, right, is in a game, if you win the game, then you can celebrate your victory afterwards. In life, when the clock runs out, you're done, right? And so
right,
it doesn't even matter if you believe in an afterlife or not. The point is that the life that you lived here, um, the things that you choose to do, and that's sort of what determines the value that you had in this particular life, right? And so if you just made a bunch of money and you didn't know what to do with it, or it was never enough, right? Because we have something like 3/4 of people making six figures are living paycheck to paycheck and don't have retirement plans and this sort of stuff. And a quarter of them report being very poor, right? And you go, you're chasing the wrong things if that's the boat that you're in, and yeah, there's so many other things to life than money, and the biggest one is time, right? You don't get that back, and so you have to be in the present moment, and you have to be enjoying it the best you can, in order to live the good life. I've got a lot of stuff, right? I've just finished writing my first novel, and so that's in editing, and it'll probably come out this summer. And I plan on doing an audiobook version of it. I'm going to redo some of the studio installation in here, and do an audiobook with my own voice. So that'll be cool. And yeah, new branding for the podcast, and I I'm just always I'm always excited for things, right? I always have new ideas and new things that I want to try and do. So there's a lot of stuff. So it's a fantasy book. So it's fiction, and just creating, doing world building, creating my own universe and characters, and trying to tell a story that um, the biggest thing I tried to do with it, right, is take abstract concepts that are sort of archetypical of the human experience and make them concrete, and then take concrete things that we have in our everyday experience and sort of make them abstract or conceptual in the book. So yeah, so I've been working on that, and then me and my co-host are writing a philosophy book as well. So yeah, just a lot of irons in the fire. Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I, People talk about legacy, right? And I don't really care about that, right? Because it's all going to fade away, and again, this doesn't matter on your beliefs. It doesn't matter if you're religious or an atheist or whatever. Um, Almost everybody agrees that this universe, this world, this life that we have will fade away at some point, right? You can have kids and great grandkids and great great grandkids, and at some point, nobody will remember who you were. Nobody will remember what you did. Um, so it's what you're doing at the given moment, right? And so I just want to be remembered as somebody who did as much good as they could in the time that they had, and that goes in several directions, right? It goes in creative endeavors, it goes into personal relationships, it goes into communal good, being involved in local government, and trying to make a difference there. And so I guess what it boils down to is, I it's very common in the world today to people think it's cool to just not care, right, about whatever it is, right? It's easier to not care, and therefore to sort of absolve yourself of any guilt in how the world is going, right? I guess that I just want to be known as somebody who cared, right? Somebody who tried to make the world a better place in some way. I think what I'd tell them is that we're both the good and the evil in the world, right? And the only way to fix it is to start with ourselves. Um, we need to change our perspective and appreciate what's here, what we already have. And again, that's just the big thing is perspective, right? A lot of people today are they're on one side or the other, or they view things as being this very black and white. That's what it boils down to, is we're the good and the bad. And so if you want to see the world be a better place, you're going to have to be a better person. No, you've asked a lot of interesting questions, and I think that it's really been a good interview. I'm the world's worst marketer, so that I'm a little bit hard to find. If you just type my name, Joel Bouchard, into Google, you'll be able to find my music pretty easily. My latest album is All We Are. Nothing on the book yet because it's not published. My podcast is From Nowhere to Nothing. So if you're interested in philosophy, again, you can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's really critical.
Yeah, absolutely.